What is up, beautiful people? First off, thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Stephanie, and welcome to No Longer Stranded. Let's go ahead and get started on our last episode of Season 1, Situational Depression. And this time, it's about to get personal. A great way to end our first season and merge into our second one. A mile in my shoes. Thank you. First off, I want to start by thank you guys and letting you know that I'm so grateful for you guys, the people who are out there that are listening and giving me feedback, not only giving me feedback, but also relating to each episode and thanking me for explaining each type of depression. This episode will be the last one on explaining a type of depression, but it will also be merging into the first episode of Season 2, which will be about me and my personal life and what I've gone through and what I did to achieve what I've gone through. And listen, I'm still working progress. It's not completed. I'm not 100%. And honestly, I don't think anybody's 100%. But I'm excited for the second episode. So I'm glad for those who are sticking around. I'm glad for the newcomers. If you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining. I hope it does just as much justice for you guys as it's been doing for me. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll give you a little insight on situational depression. It's just like major depression, except it's brought on a specific type of an event or situations that can be traumatic, stressful, or life-changing, such as death by a loved one, a serious illness, or other life-threatening events, going through a divorce or a child custody issue, being in an emotional or physical abusive relationship, or both, or mentally abusive, unemployment, basically anything that can make you feel so tiny, make you feel less of yourself, little, worthless. It's normal to feel sad and anxious during any kind of events, just like these type of events that I listed. Or it's normal to even pull yourself away from others when you're going through something. But in situational depression, feelings become triggering during the events, and it interferes with your daily life. Usually starts within the 3 months of the situation that's making you feel so low. And you know you hit situational depression when you start frequently crying. Sadness, hopelessness, anxiety, appetite change, difficulty sleeping, aches and pains, lack of energy, inability to concentrate, social withdrawal. It often lasts a very short time, but it can last much longer in some cases, and can be classified as acute or persistent adjustment disorder. But it can also develop into a more serious mental disorder, such as major depression. In some cases, people can recover from this without treatment. They often get better quickly once they are taken out of that situation. But you could physically take yourself out of a situation and mentally stay stuck in it. You become a prisoner to yourself. You lock yourself in your thoughts. Physically, you're out of the situation, but you lock yourself in your thoughts and you just keep replaying the incident that happened. And like physically, you're there in social events, but mentally, your mind's going miles and miles and miles per hour, not understanding what happened or why it happened or why me. Why did this happen to me? Constantly blaming yourself, constantly putting yourself down. Or what if this happened instead of that? What if I said this instead of saying that? What if I did this instead of doing that? Constantly think about our actions and putting the blame on ourselves. And normally when a situation happens, it's not our fault. Well, I don't want to say it's not our fault, but normally when a situation happens to the point where you start feeling depressed about it, it's 9 out of 10 times, it's not our fault. We start paying attention to our actions and what we said, what we did, what we're doing, and what we could have done better, instead of thinking about the full-on situation, like, okay, but this is why I reacted this way. Why wasn't I understood? Why am I blaming myself? We're not thinking that. We're just thinking we need to blame ourselves. We are the problem, and we're never going to be happy if we continue blaming ourselves for things that we have no control over. The only thing we have control over is ourselves, our minds, and our action. We are not our thoughts, but we are our actions. And that's the problem, is that we continue focusing on those type of things and sitting and laying in bed and wondering, why am I so unworthy of love? Why am I so sad? And not sad emotionally, not just emotionally, but sad as a person. Like, I'm a sorry excuse as a person. And these are the negative talks that we constantly put in our minds, in our heads, and just brings ourselves down all the time. And I'm sorry, but I got tired of living that way, and that's why I decided to make the change. And I really hope you guys make that change too. But what put me in this situation, what made me go through a situational depression. Now, I suffer from major depression, and that didn't kick in till after this situational depression. What made me fall into this situational depression was a relationship that I was in. The situation was rough. It was very, very rough, and it started off good. It wasn't horrible from the beginning. I thought it was true love. I thought it was someone I saw myself with for the rest of my life. And it was for the simple fact that I was going through some family issues. So I had to move in with her. Well, I didn't have to, but I chose to because she offered, and I took the offering. So living with her at first it was amazing. She had 2 little ones, not of her own, but they were constantly there, so they might as well have been her own. We were constantly taking care of them together, doing schoolwork. It just felt like a whole family, like I felt like, wow, I don't have kids with this female, but these kids play a huge part in both of our lives right now, and we're both taking care of them, making sure they have their homework done, putting them to bed at a certain time, making sure they're behaving, making sure that they had food to eat, and her mom living there as well, constantly needing to be taken to doctor appointments. Or there were times where her mom and I were just kicking it. Now, she didn't speak a lick of English, and I didn't speak a lick of Spanish, but somehow we learned how to communicate, and we understood each other. At first, her mom was against it, but then I don't know what changed in her. I guess she saw how I was with the kids and how I put my part into taking care of the house and helping them out with certain things and taking her to doctor appointments that she couldn't get to on her own. So I guess I gave her a change of heart, and we learned to just cook with each other, talk with each other. It felt like home at first, and I guess I just put this so far deep behind me that I don't remember exactly why everything switched up or why things just didn't work out, but all I remember is the bad. The very little good was good for the first couple months of the relationship, but all I seem to remember is the bad. When I think about this person, it's like, damn, things could have gone so well for us, but like I said, all I remember is the bad. And I keep repeating that because it's like, I'm not sure if it's because I'm scared to open up about it, or I'm scared to bring myself back into that situation, but I'm not the person I used to be, and yeah, I'm not. So let's talk about it. Well, see, when I met her, things were great. Things were really good, She knew I had some family issues, and then she was able to take me under her wing. And I don't mean under her wing completely, because I was working. I had my part of my money and everything. Just things between us were just, at first was great, but then trust issues came in on both ends. Mainly started with her, though. In the beginning, it was constant, like, always wanted to check my phone. The minute I got home from work, it wasn't even a hi. It was, give me your phone, And God forbid if I had friends. If I had friends, it was the end of the world. And I think that's one thing I hold against her, is that I had an opportunity to hang out with a good friend of mine that I hadn't seen in years, and I couldn't because if I did, it would be an issue with me and her. So I refrained from doing so, and a couple of years later he passes. So I do hold a lot of resentment. Well, I did hold a lot of resentment towards her at that time. But when I was with her, it was a dark moment for me. Coming home from a stressful, I work in the kitchen, so coming home from a stressful shift, with nothing but tables and tables and tables after tables and no breaks, and finally getting home late at night to let me see your phone or let me look at your Instagram. It then became a point where I had no phone. She took the phone away from me, and I wasn't able to get it until I got home. Then I had switched jobs, and I started working at this new spot. I met a really good friend of mine there, and we texted a lot. We talked a lot, and I guess that upset her because it's like I said, I only got my phone when I got home, which would be like sometimes 11:30 at night, midnight, and I'm texting this person, who's also a female. So I guess that's where the trust issue came in. And it got physical at that point because she didn't know this woman. She didn't know that we was just coworkers. We were just friends, and my coworker didn't know what was going on at home because I'm not going to talk about that. I don't need someone who I just met to know my business, or not even know my business, but it wasn't comfortable because it wasn't right. It didn't feel right for me to sit there and deal with someone like that, and it's crazy that I'm sitting here at that now saying like I shouldn't have dealt with that, but I did. I dealt with it for so long, and it got to the point where I became very suicidal. I attempted a few times in the same exact house, in the room right next to her. She didn't even know, didn't even care. The only time she ever bothered to come into that room was to start up more issues, start up more arguments, and try to figure out what I was doing in the room. And every time we just got into an argument, she would always just kick me out. And I had nowhere to go. Nowhere. I mean, at that time, I felt like I had nowhere to go because I didn't have anybody. And that's because I let her take everyone away from me, and I let her control me. I let her be in control of my life. So when I was by myself, I felt hopeless. I felt worthless because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know what to say. It's like she controlled every aspect of my life, my mindset, my way of doing, everything. And God forbid if I breathed wrong, it was an issue. So there were times where I was out on the street, sleeping on a bench. I always had my family there, but I wasn't in contact with them at that time. And they tried to be there for me. They showed up to her house plenty of times. I wouldn't get informed. It was like she loved to drill in my head that they didn't love me, they didn't care. They're manipulating me. I don't want to sound like I'm blaming her for all this, but this is how it felt for me. And it finally got to the point where I got the courage to just get up and say, I can't live like this anymore. I can't be with somebody like this. I can't be in the same house with this person. I need to go. So I went and I got myself a phone from Metro. She didn't know, and I used it obviously to look up an apartment. Got in contact with my family, and they helped me. They helped me get out of that situation. And I finally found an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment. I had a roommate, but it was hard for me after that. I thought it was going to be easy because I physically took myself out of that situation. But like I said earlier, I became a prisoner in my head. I I physically took myself out, but I was still living in that situation mentally. And I drove myself crazy, and I figured, okay, you know what, maybe if I jump onto another relationship, I could fill that void, or ignore these thoughts, or put it behind me, put it past me, and not have to deal with it. But reality is, with situations like that, you have to deal with it. Feeling the feelings is more than okay, but you have to deal with it, heal from it in order for you to move on. But what I did was I swept it under the rug. And I ignored my emotions, and I hopped onto somebody else. Putting that same anger that I had towards her, the same hurt that I had towards her, I put all that energy into this new person instead of treating them right. But it's because I was hurt, and hurt people, and that's a real thing. That's serious. There was plenty of times where she would come over just to check up on me because I would go MIA. I would call off of work. I wouldn't go in just so I could be in bed watching TV, feeling sad for myself. Like, damn, why doesn't anybody love me? Why doesn't anybody want me? Why am I like this? Why am I going through this? What is it that I'm doing wrong? Or sitting there wondering, well, what if I just listened to her? What if I wasn't disobedient and just gave her what she wanted? Things would have been better for me, for us. But hearing me say that now is like, you don't want to be a slave to somebody you call your partner, someone you so-called love and they so-called love you. You shouldn't be a slave to them. It should be an equal relationship. But all I ever did was just sit in a room all day, depressed, sad, trying to figure out why did I do this? Why did I act in this way? I should have never gotten my coworker's number. I should have never went out and just did whatever it is that I did when I didn't do anything wrong. Half the time it was me going out to get groceries or me going out to get a haircut, and it's like, oh, what female are you with? Who are you going to be with? And being followed into these places because she didn't trust me. But I just felt very low, and I thought me physically taking myself out, it was gonna do me justice, it was gonna make me better, but it just made me more depressed. It made me more depressed because it's like I got into a routine, like when you're stuck doing something over and over again, and then you take yourself out of that routine, your body's confused, you're confused, I got used to getting yelled at, I got used to getting hit, I got used to coming home and reporting what I did at work and why did it take longer to get home even though it was only 5 minutes later than usual, explaining that the bus was late or this person held up the bus. It was a routine that I was stuck on, to the point that when I finally moved out and moved on, I found myself wanting to call her. I found myself calling her to check in on her. And that just blows my mind on the routines that people get on when they're dealing with relationships like this, with people like this who are mentally, physically, and emotionally abusive to you. And you just blame yourself for everything. You blame yourself for everything, and you take all the faults in their actions, and you make it feel like it's your own. I could have done better. When you did everything in your power to try to satisfy them, to try to make them happy, but you weren't enough for them, and that's okay. That's okay. You need to be enough for you. You need to worry about you and focus on you. But I didn't do that. I continued to be stressed, be depressed, push people away. Friends checking them in on me, trying to make sure I'm okay because I went MIA for almost a year and a half, and now I'm back out of nowhere, but I'm very distant. And it's like, dude, come on, you've been away for a year and some change now, and you're finally back, but yet you're still distant. What's going on? And I still didn't want to talk about it. They invited me out to go drink and stuff, and sometimes I took up on it. I went and got drunk, but I still felt alone. I had all my friends with me, family members with me, but I still felt alone. And that's what situational depression is that you sit there and events like this happen to you and you take the blame, you blame yourself, and then you put yourself down. And you constantly just live in that negative thought of yourself, hating yourself for it. Not hating the situation, not hating yourself for putting yourself in that situation or allowing this to happen, but you hate yourself for not making it better, for not trying harder, when it's like you did everything in your power. You did everything you could do to make it better. It's not you, it's them. And once you learn that, once you accept that, you could easily move on and heal from it. But I didn't do that. I just kept sleeping and eating. Oh my God, I ate all my feelings away. I gained so much weight. When I met her, I was probably like 115, 120. After being with her, during her, all I did was eat. And after, all I did was eat even more. I ended up being 160 pounds. And that's the biggest I've ever been. So with that depression, all it did was make me eat, sleep, and not care about anything. You know, I had a good friend of mine bring me all the way to North Carolina. He knew the situation that I was going through. He knew the situation that I was in. And he was like, listen, I don't care. You're coming with me because I'm not going to leave you by yourself. We're not going to leave you alone. So he brought me. And I tried to have fun, but when I tell you, when we was with a group of people, it was for one of these like entrepreneur stuff. So they had like a huge event. So we went to Hooters after the event, and our table was like maybe 15 people. And I still felt alone. People were engaging in conversations, and I was just sitting there, not knowing how to talk to anybody. Like, I felt mute. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to conversate with anybody anymore. It was, converse with anybody. I didn't know. It's like I lost a part of me, and all I did was think about her, missed her, and wonder what she was doing and if she was okay. I drove myself crazy, wondering about her and forgetting about me, forgetting about how she treated me. It's like the way everything went down, it's like I felt like I deserved it, and nobody deserves that. So that lasted about, I want to say, 5 to 6 months of me feeling like this. I finally moved back in with my parents after some time because I felt like I couldn't be alone anymore. I just needed something familiar. And I got another job in another city. I wanted to start fresh. I needed everything new. I needed to get out of the city that I lived in with her and move to another city, which thankfully that's where my parents lived at, was another city, and get another job somewhere else. So I wasn't constantly reminded of her and us or whatever we had. So I got myself out of that city and I started new things, and I wasn't 100%, but I felt like I was getting there. I thought I was getting there. Things were okay. They weren't great, but they were better than what they were before. I was able to communicate more with people. I was able to hang out socially with people without feeling awkward or weird or entirely alone. I did still feel alone, but not all the time. It depended on my mood. But I was capable of doing things now. I was capable of thinking of myself a little bit more. Not entirely, but a little bit more. And that's all that mattered to me, was that I was doing something a little bit more. And just when I thought, okay, it's going to take time, just little by little, and I'm going to pull through this, that's when major depression hit me. And that's when things started getting worse for me. And all I could think about was why? Why am I putting myself through this if I got myself out of this situation? But it's because I never went through the emotions. Like, yes, I went through the emotion, but I went through the emotions of blaming myself. Instead of sitting there and try to analyze the situation and realize it's not me. It wasn't me. And not seeing someone. And that's the number one thing I feel like should be done, is seeing someone, talking to somebody. Whether it's somebody you know or somebody you don't know, it might be easier for you to talk to somebody you don't know. But that needs to be done. When a situation happens like that, you need to let that out. You need to let it out to somebody else so you can realize and have them help you open your eyes that you weren't the situation. You weren't the problem. And that it's amazing that you took yourself out. You can handle this. You could do this. You could move on your own. You can move forward. You could be happy. But you got to love yourself. And that's the problem. I didn't love myself. And major depression kicked in more because I didn't focus my time fixing myself and loving myself. I focused my time on bettering how to ignore the situation, how to ignore my feelings, how to hide them, such as going out and drinking and partying, or just doing stupid things that I shouldn't have been doing. That was my main focus instead of focusing on me. That's what you need to do. Focus on you. Worry about what you need mentally, physically, emotionally. Worry about you. Heal all the pains that you go through. Feel every single feeling for a moment. Don't live in it though, because that's when you lead to major depression. And that's exactly what I did. I led myself to major depression. But that's going to be in episode 1, season 2. So tune in. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you guys. You're amazing. If you have any questions, if you have any topics, or if you guys want to let things off your chest, you're more than welcome to send me an email at strengtheningwithsteph@gmail.com, or you can go ahead and follow my Instagram, strengtheningwithsteph, or my second Instagram, no longer stranded. Have a blessed day, guys.